Jon Oliva telling everybody tune in for the rockumentary on my career with Savatage and without Savatage. I hope you'll be listening. Crank it up, folks.
Jon Oliva, first of all, welcome to the Metal Express Rockumentary series.
It's nice to be here. How you doing, man?
We're going to take a trip down memory lane. Let's go back to the very beginning. I guess it all started when you moved to Florida from New York with your brother.
Well, actually, we moved from New York to California, and then from California to Florida. Actually, it was in California where we actually started to play together. Chris was like 7 years old, and I think I was like 13, something like that. And that's when we actually first started playing together, musically. I mean, the first time we ever performed live in front of people was in California at a New Year's Eve party. And we played a song by Deep Purple off of the Burn album. I can't remember the name of it now, though, but it was the blues song off of the Deep Purple record. It was my younger brother Chris and my older brother Tony, and we played a three-piece. I played the drums and sang, and so that's And then Florida, when we moved to Florida and we were a little bit older, that's when we started actually like writing songs and doing everything. So Florida was definitely the birthplace of our songwriting.
He was a guitar player, and you have mainly been playing the keyboards and, of course, singing. Did you ever discuss who's going to play what?
Yeah, I started on guitar, and Chris started on bass. But it was quite apparent to me after a week of him playing guitar that he was going to be a lot better than me. So I said, okay, you play guitar and I'll play bass. So then we switched. And then, in Florida and stuff, by the time we got to Florida and stuff, when we were doing that, I was playing bass, and I played drums in one cover band we did, and then he was on guitar from that point on. But I had visions of being the guitar god, and I failed miserably. So,
did he ever try to sing?
He used to sing "Surrender" when we used to play it live. Mama told me, yes, she told. He didn't really do a very good job of it. He wasn't really a good singer, but he was a motherfucker on guitar, though. But I got stuck with the singing because no one else could sing. I didn't want to be the only singer, man. I was just, they were like, well, I can't sing, so you have to sing. I'm like, oh, man, I don't want to sing all that shit. But, so I got the singing job by process of elimination. No one else in the band could sing a note. So it was either me or we were going to be instrumental.
Most of your fans know about Avatar. That was the beginning of Savatage. But there was a band before that called Metropolis.
Metropolis, yeah. That was the bar band we had. And that was the one I played drums and Chris played guitar, and we had another guitar player, a bass player, and we had a lead singer. And so I didn't have to sing everything. So we had two singers. I was always liked that because it was versatile. You didn't get tired of the same guy's voice all the time. So, and that was Metropolis, and that was a bar band. And then after that, split up, and we started doing our own stuff. Is when we came up with Avatar, and that's when we did the City Beneath the Surface CD EP and stuff. And that was the beginning of it all.
You're a long-time drummer, Steve Ackles. He joined you
He came in right after the Metropolis thing, and then actually we moved to the house that we were living in Florida, which actually became the Pit, which is where we did all of our early stuff, all our early work. And Wackles just happened to live across the street, up the road, and I remember him showing up at my house one day in a baseball uniform. We were out there with all long hair, smoking grass and stuff, and this guy walks in a baseball uniform. I was like, who the fuck is this guy? But it was Steve, and he was convenient. We needed a drummer, and he lived right up the road, and so we trained him. We chopped up some broomsticks and made him play with broomsticks because we could never hear him. He played like a pansy when we first got him. He played with little thin drumsticks, and me and my brother were merciless. We were deaf before we were 20, so we used to encircle him with all our equipment, and we would just say, you got to play harder, you got to play harder. And then one day he just kept breaking drumsticks, so I went out to the tool shed, and there was a big rake, a garden rake, so I took the saw, and I came back in with these drumsticks. They were like baseball bats, cricket bat. And I go, here, you got to play with these so we can hear you. And that's when Dr. Killdrums was born, man. Because after that practice, I said, dude, you're Dr. Killdrums. And from that day on, he started calling himself Dr. Killdrums.
with Avatar, as you mentioned, you released an EP, City Beneath the Surface. It was only made about 1,000 copies, I think, and it's a very rare item these days. Have you got a copy yourself?
No. No, actually, you know what? I tell a lie. My nephew, Christopher Jon Oliva, my young nephew, who is very much looks just like my brother. It's scary to see him, and plays guitar. He actually got one on the off online for me and gave it to me. So I do have one. I have it framed in a glass frame with a picture of us in Metallica together, hanging out backstage in San Francisco.
Before the Sirens album, your debut, you were forced to change the name of the band.
Yeah, it was a band in England called Avatar at that time, and I remember that night as if it happened yesterday. I mean, it was like we got the phone call from the guy from Par Records, Dan Johnson, and he goes, "We have a problem." I'm like, "What?" He goes, "You got to change the name of the band." So we were like, "Oh shit!" So we're sitting there at my kitchen table, me and my wife and my brother Chris and his wife, and we had big poster paper and we had Avatar written out. And we were like, "What can we do? What can we do?" So we put an S in front of it, and it was Savatar. And I was like, "That sounds like a really bad dinosaur name." So now. And we were just messing around, and I think it was my brother Chris that came up with the Tage, T-A-G-E. He said, "Take the R and let's make it T-A-G-E," and it was, and then it was Savatage, and then we just put the S back in front of it, and it was Savatage, and we were like, "This is perfect," and that was how that was it. It was just trying to figure out what to call the record in an hour. We had like an hour, you know. It's fucking crazy shit.
The debut was released in '83. How do you look upon that release now?
It was very, you know, I mean, you were just at that time freaked out just that you had a record out. You know, that was it was a very intense thing because we were just some shit kickers from Florida. We didn't, you know, nobody even knew what heavy metal was in Florida when we came out. They banned us from every club in Tampa because we would have riots would always break out whenever we played, fights, and people would drive one guy drove his truck through the front window of the bar, and I mean, so no one would let us play anywhere. So that's when we really went original, and you know, but that record was very important. You know, it was the beginning of the whole locomotion mode of running down the track.
Just beyond the
Power of the Night, your next album, was released about the same time as the Dungeons Are Calling EP on two different labels. Why is that?
That was confusing. Well, I think that was just the Dungeons thing was supposed to come out right after Sirens, and we got signed to Atlantic Records. They picked us up, and that kind of pissed off the guy from the little label that we were with. But what did he expect us to do? You know, I mean, it was like, so so he had that, and he was sitting on it, and he timed it to release it right before Power of the Night to try to fuck it up, you know, to try to make the sales of Power of the Night not be as good. So, and it worked because Dungeons sold a lot, and it took away a little bit from Power of the Night, but we survived it, you know.
Max Norman actually produced the Power of the Night album. Yeah. Must have been a great feeling to have him aboard.
We had never worked with a producer before. This was all new shit to us. We were like, wow. This guy worked with Randy Rhoads and Ozzy Osbourne. Yeah, okay, yeah, he's good enough. I remember the guy going, "You think this guy's good enough to produce a record?" I'm like, "Well, who is he?" They're like, "Max Norman." I'm like, "Isn't he the guy that just did the Ozzy records?" They're like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Yeah, he'll do."
After that album, your bass player Keith Collins left the band, and well, John Lee Middleton came in. Yeah. Any particular reason why he left?
Well, Keith couldn't play. Keith was the only guy we could find in Florida that owned a PA and that was willing to play the bass, because he was really a guitar player. Okay. So he was really never a bass player, and the whole thing with him got really out of hand because he was never considered by any of us that he was going to be our permanent bass player. He was a guy that we needed, a guy down there. We hadn't found anybody yet, and he was the only one we could find, and we stuck him in there. But I think on all the records, I mean, he played on Dungeons and Sirens and Power of the Night. But I know for a fact that all the bass guitar on Power of the Night is me and my brother. There's not one track. We had to go back and do all his stuff over again. And a couple of songs on Sirens and Dungeons Are Calling we had to do, because he wasn't a bass player. And it's not knocking the guy or nothing. He was a good friend and stuff, but he was just filling in the shoes until we could find somebody. So that's what happened with that. And we needed somebody who could play, who could keep up with Chris, you know. And Keith just couldn't do it. I mean, it was hard for me to do it, you know. And so we got Johnny. We met up with Johnny, and he was what my brother was looking for in a bass player. I told him, I said, "You've got to play with the guys, so you pick out the bass player. I don't want to have any fucking thing to do with it at all." And I said, you know, and he showed up one night with Johnny Middleton. He goes, "This guy here," and I was listening to Johnny play, and I was like, "Oh, I see," because he wanted someone that was very steady, and that's what we got.
And then you actually went to London to record the next album, Fight for the Rock. Why did you go all the way to London?
That was a bad year. You know, that whole year was fucked up. I mean, The reason we went there was because we had these two managers who were criminals, and they were really good criminals because they were ripping off everybody that they were involved with, including us. And I think they sent us there to keep us away from the offices in New York as much as possible so they could steal all our money, which they successfully did. But what I thought was cool about that was the Beatles recorded there. So anywhere where the Beatles recorded, I'll take that in an instant, because I'm a Beatles freak. So, but it was just a bad direction. We had a lot of bad misdirection that year. These guys were just telling us all kinds of wacko things, and when you're four guys, you have no money and no life, and you've just had babies, and you got to feed people, and you've got these guys sitting there driving around in Jaguars telling you, do this, and you'll be able to take care of your family, and do this, so you do it, and of course it doesn't work, so then you kick yourself in the ass. But I don't think there's one band I know of that hasn't laid an egg at some point in their career. You can't just be perfect all the time. Even the Beatles and bands like that, there's songs that, are like, what's that? You know what I mean? So I think that was a very important year for us, because that was after that record, we finally learned how to tell everyone to fuck off and leave us alone. And we didn't care anymore, because we were told we were going to be rich millionaires, and that didn't happen. And then we were like, you know what? If we're not going to make any money at this, we're going to do it the way we want to do it, and everyone can suck my dick. I hope I can say this on radio. We were just at the end of our ropes. We had spent all the money we had touring for Power of the Night. Cost us every penny we had. And then, you have these guys telling you, you've got to do this, and so we did it, and it came out, and everyone hated it. And I look back, I can't even listen to the record. I don't think maybe once since then I've ever listened to a song on that record. It wasn't a Savatage record. It was filled with a bunch of songs that I was writing for other people to do. And, there's most of the songs on this record were written for other artists. I was submitting demos, and then they came out and said, no, you guys need to record these songs. I mean, I can go right down. Crying for Love was one for someone else. I think, She's Only Rock and Roll, Lady in Disguise, Red Light Paradise. They were all written for other people to do. I never considered Savatage doing them, but it ended up we did them like a bunch of idiots. But yeah, you live, you learn.
You were signed to Atlantic for many years. They didn't give you any support when it came to touring and stuff, so you had to pay everything yourself. Was that... that must have been very frustrating to use your own money just to go on tour.
It sucked, is what it did. Yeah. Savatage, the whole career of Savatage has never been about the money. I don't think we ever really made any money. We break even, but but we never compromised ourselves after Fight for the Rock. After we put our feet down and said, screw this. We're doing what we want to do. We don't care since we're not making any money anyway. I'm going to be damned if I'm going to be broke and miserable. If I'm going to be broke, I at least want to be having a good time. Sure. So, it was very difficult, man. It's very, very difficult when you just... I had a 2-year-old son at the time, My kid was just born. He was born in 83. So, it was like at that time, he was 3-4 years old. And I'm sitting here like, you know, having to come up with $27,000 to pay for, you know, for overages on touring expenses. You know, it was fucked up.
I read somewhere that you actually sold quite a few albums in the States at this point, but you always focused on Europe when it came to touring. You didn't tour much in the States at all.
In the early days, we toured a lot more in the States than we did in Europe. I mean, the first time we ever came to Europe was the end of '86, beginning of '87. So we were together for 5 years touring before we ever even made it to Europe. But it was so much different in the States back then. The States back then was like Europe is now. People still want to go to a show. You know, in the States now, no one wants to go to them. They're too expensive. And the drinking laws are all over 21, so you can't even get into the thing unless you're older than 21. So they've ruined it. So they've ruined all the live performances there. So what are you going to do? You know, it's nothing like here. That's why I come here to play, because I love the interaction with the audiences. You know, here is very cool. They let you get close to them, and I like that.
Things started to happen in 1987. You released one of the greatest albums in your career, I guess, one of the most famous ones, Hall of the Mountain King, and it was again a kick-ass production, yeah. And Paul O'Neill got involved here. He has been a very important person for Savatage in all the years after. How did you get in touch with him in the first place?
Well, he saved the day after the Fight for the Rock nightmare ended. And we were going to break up, and we had gotten rid of our managers and had no money left. I got a phone call one night at like 4 o'clock in the morning from Paul O'Neill and my brother Chris. He had gotten my brother on the phone, and then they got me on the phone. And we told him, we said, well, you know, we're $60,000 in debt. We have no money. We can't pay our rent. We can't do anything. We're just going to break up. And he was like, no, you're not. He says, how much money you need? Okay, here. He gave me and my brother a huge chunk of money, pay all our bills. Said, I want you guys to go in. This is where got us a beautiful place to rehearse. This is a guy, I've never met him before now, you know. Guess it's this beautiful place to rehearse. Says, I'll go in there and write a Savatage album. And that's what we did. And then he started working with us. I knew he had a knack for lyrics, you know, but still on Mountain King, he didn't write that much lyrics. He kind of co-wrote with us. But I knew he had a great knack for lyrics, and I always agonized with lyrics. I can do it, but I'm not a big fan of having to write lyrics. So to get someone involved that was a lyricist, to me, was just great, because I was like, oh, thank God, someone to help me a little bit, you know. So it was great, you know, and he saw something in us. He saw the versatility in the musicians, in myself and my brother, and he was like, you know, we got to bring these things out, you know, your emotion, your, you know, all that stuff that you guys have, the heavy stuff you guys do is great, but there's so much more you guys can offer. So he really gave us the confidence to try stuff like Strange Wings, and where, you know, not that it wasn't, that everything we played wasn't straight heavy metal. Because up until then, pretty much except for Fight for the Rock, again, which is Fight for the Rock just doesn't count, because it wasn't our record. But I'm saying on the records that we were in control of the material, Sirens, Dungeons, Power of the Night, which was our control, even with Max Norman, but we picked the songs. Every song was pretty heavy, except for a ballad here or there, you know. So, you know, Paul opened up a lot of doors to us to say, let's try to work with an orchestra. Let's try to do this. Why don't you guys try to do that? And we were like, yeah, this is great. This guy's all right. Plus, he gave us a shitload of money.
This album is packed with great tracks. I guess you had grown a lot as songwriters during all those years.
Yeah, I mean, we were starting to figure it out. By Mountain King, we got it. You know, the songs were becoming more, more, I don't say polished sounding, but they just were better. They took a step. Everything with Savatage was like a step. Sirens, The Dungeon, Power of the Night was better. And again, Fight for the Rock doesn't count. And then Mountain King, you know, took another big leap. You know, and I remember I knew Mountain King was good because it was the first time I was really afraid of the next record. I was really afraid of going in and trying to follow up Mountain King. I was like, oh, well, now we're fucked because we're never going to write a record better than this. And I remember I had incredible anxiety over that, and it was driving me crazy.
You actually shot your first video for this record. That was the title track, I think.
Mountain King, yeah.
What do you remember from the shooting of that track?
The little dwarf dude. I got the little dwarf drunk and wasted. And he kept running away, hiding in the cave, and Paul O'Neill would be looking for him. His name was John. He was an English guy, but he was a dwarf, you know. He'd be with me in the bathroom. These we filmed it in these underground caverns. And, you know, so during the day, tourists and stuff come through there. But at night, we did all the shooting at night. And they had like a restroom down there. So it would be me and the little dwarf in the restroom smoking pot in the bathroom stalls. Paul would come in. I don't believe you're doing this. What are you doing? I'm paying all this money and you're getting the dwarf stoned. It was great. Classic shit. But, yeah, so the dwarf and me were really tight. You know, he liked me. I dug him, too. You know, he was all right.
Did you get the opportunity to make videos because Atlantic started to support you, or was it Paul O'Neill that paid for?
They started to see that they had something, and you know, and Mountain King sold really, really well. So yeah, I mean, but I guess a lot of it was Paul telling them, "Look, you got to do a video of these guys," and you know, and Paul put up a lot of money for Savatage. Paul became that's why he became a member of the band, kind of like I am now with Trans-Siberian Orchestra. It's like he was so crucial to what was going on, but though you never saw him on stage, but every other aspect of what was going on, he was 100% involved in, except for actually performing on stage and the writing, the producing. You know, we did a lot of work together. You know, we all seemed to click. Me and my brother, we were just on the same page. So, you know, and moving on to the next record after that, it made it even easier because now we weren't afraid to do anything. Now we would try anything, you know.
How was the process making Gutter Ballet?
I was very nervous because I was like, yeah, you know, Mountain King was a damn good record. Boy, this is going to be tough. And the best songs on Gutter Ballet, or what we call the big songs on Gutter Ballet, didn't come out until almost when the record was almost finished. Like the actual title track, Gutter Ballet, When the Crowds Are Gone, Hounds, and I think of Rage and War. Those 4 songs were written like at the end of the record. So if you take those 4 songs off of the record, it's not as strong a record as Mountain King. So you got to see, I'm in the studio and I'm panicking now because I'm like, we need some big songs. We don't have the big songs. We have plenty of good songs. The Unholy, great. She's in Love, great. You know, but we need some big songs. And Paul Neal bought me tickets. They were doing guitar solos one night, and he bought me tickets to go see Phantom of the Opera. It was playing on Broadway in New York, right around the corner from Record Plant, which where we were recording. And he brought me tickets to go see it, so I went and saw it while they were working on guitar solos, and I got back to the studio about midnight after it was done and walked out there, and John Lennon's white grand piano sitting out there, and I sat down, and the very first thing that came out was the whole beginning of Gutter Ballet. I just started playing it. And we always have a tape machine on the piano. Wherever we work, we have these little shitty cassette boxes, just in case you come up with an idea, you just hit it on and you don't forget it. So that's what happened, and I wrote Gutter Ballet, the music for that, and sang it and was playing it. And then they came out into the studio. I said, Paul, I think I got a song, and I played it for them, and they were all just like, oh my God, where'd you think of that? I was like, Phantom of the Opera. And then crowds came, and then Chris wrote the music for Hounds. He came in the next day because he had to outdo me. He had to try to outdo me because the one night I came up with Gutter, so the next morning we went back to the hotel and stuff, and I could hear him in the room next door, like fiddling around all night long. And the next day he goes, hey, he says, I have this new song, man. He says, I don't know what we should call it. We were going to call it The Hounds of Zaroff. And he started playing it for me, and I was just like, you rotten little bastard. You had to outdo me, huh? Because I just love Hounds, the music for that. I was just in awe of that. I was like, I can't wait to put a melody and write lyrics for this. So then crowds came the next day. So then I was happy with the record. I was like, oh, this is going to be good. This is going to be a good one.
This is the first album with a second guitar player. Chris Caffrey joined the band for this record. Why did you take the decision to bring in another guitar player?
Because the stuff was just getting more complicated, and Chris just couldn't do it all by himself, and I didn't want to be stuck having to play piano all the time to cover the rhythms. And it was just time. We needed, the stuff was just, it wasn't sounding good live anymore. There was too much, we were putting too much into the records. And we needed to be able to reproduce it live, and that's when we decided to pick up another guitar player and enter Chris Caffrey. So
but he was out when you released the next record, Streets.
Yeah, well, he got a taste of success, and then he decided he wanted to try to do something on his own. Which, well, I think a lot of also was due to the fact that he was told that, because he never played on Gutter Ballet. He didn't play anything. He was put in the band, but he got his picture on there, but he never played on the record. And he was told he wasn't going to be playing on the Streets either. So I guess for him, my brother was a sweet person, but it was very evident that he wasn't going to share the guitar duties with anybody on the record. It was going to be his gig, and Chris wasn't, Chris Caffrey was, he was upset by that, but he wanted to play with his brother also, because his brother was a drummer. So they went off, and they said he was going to try to do something with them. So, that's how he just went off one day and said, well, I'm going to go play with my brother. I said, well, good luck, man. I hope everything works out. And we just went out on our way, and we picked up another keyboard guy, which is the guy that's playing with me now with this thing I'm doing.
Stalking the night, they roam the countryside till morning's light. Do you hear the hounds sing? Scan the dark, eyes that glow. Through the bitter town, they hunt you down, hunt you down.
Well, after two strong albums, you managed to come up with maybe your most famous album, Streets, a rock opera from 1991. This is a concept album. How did you get the idea to make a concept, and how did you make the story?
It was it was Paul O'Neill's idea to do the story. He actually, when we were thinking about what to do, because now you got to figure, we just had Mountain King and Gutter Ballet. So now I'm really freaking out because I'm like, there's no fucking way we're going to be able to write a record that's better than Gutter and Mountain King. And Paul agreed with me for once. And he goes, we got to do something different. And he goes, I got this idea. He goes, since I've known you now for like 4 or 5 years, he goes, you remind me of this character. I'm like, what character? When you tell me I look like fucking Bugs Bunny or something? Or he goes, no. He goes, in this story I've been working on this rock opera story. He had no music, but he had the whole story basically. And I started reading. I'm going like, this is me. He's talking about me here. And he was like, that's kind of spooky, right? He says, I wrote this. I didn't even know who you were. But if you read the original outline of Streets, it's like me looking at my own diary, going like, yeah, I did that night. Yeah, I did that night. Yeah, I was drinking wine underneath them flashing signs with those guys that night, and it just became very personal. I was like, and then we started talking about it, and it was exciting to try to do something like that. And at that time, now Chris, my brother Chris, and me and Paul were definitely working really, really well together. And I mean, and that record is a testimony that it's the best work that we did. That we were at our peak there. That was our peak record. That was our Sgt. Pepper. That was our, that was our fucking Physical Graffiti. You know what I mean? It was definitely the high point of that band with Chris Oliva as a part of the band. That was the best work we ever did, and it's still to this day my favorite Savatage record. I do a lot of it live. Even when I'm doing with my new band that I'm playing with now, I do probably 5-6 songs off of it. So I do more songs off of that than I do off my new record. So it's like, but that's okay because that's what the kids want to hear live, and when I want to have fun live, so it don't matter to me. But that record was very strong, and still to this day, I think just from song 1 to the very end. The story's cool. It's easy to follow, and the songs are deep. It's some deep stuff there. If I Go Away is like, to me, is one of the deepest songs ever. It's so deep I can't even play it anymore. It's just I can't make it through the song without losing it. Especially now after Chris died, because when we wrote the song, I was actually writing the song about a girl. And but after Chris died, when we did the song, it's like I'm singing to him. It's so weird, and it's like, and I can't do the song anymore because of that, because it just freaks me out, and I get all fucked up, and it's like it's so strange, because it almost sounds like I wrote that song for him while he was still alive, as a song to be played after he was gone. And it just gives me goosebumps right now, even just talking about it. It's fucking weird.
It's a big classic. When it came to record sales, did it sell well enough in your...
Sold enough. I mean, all the Savatage records pretty much sold around the same. They never burned down the charts, but they never took a total shit. They always sold a steady stream, and they always just would sell steady, consistently, slowly, but they would always sell. Usually you wouldn't have it one week where you'd sell 10,000 and the next week you'd only sell 100. We'd sell like 1,000 a week every week for, it just would just keep going and going. But they never, I think a lot of that though was the fact that we were very unreasonable, and we didn't want to do a lot of the things that they wanted to do. So therefore they pulled a lot of promotional money on us, because we weren't going to have them turn us into something that wasn't. We wanted to be around for 20 years. We didn't want to be big for 2 years and then disappear off the face of the earth. We weren't going to do that. And I think we butted heads with the record company on that, because we were like, listen, You've been telling us this shit for fucking 10 years and nothing's changed. We're doing what we want to do. Like, I remember the album cover for Streets. They hated it because they said our hair wasn't puffy enough. You know, we have all straight hair. We never wore a hairspray. You know, you can see on the hair is long and straight. They didn't want to do that because our hair didn't look puffy enough. You can imagine the reaction that me and my brother had when they told us they were going to hold up our record because they wanted to reshoot the front cover because they didn't think our hair looked puffy enough. I was like, you know what? I have 2 words for you. Fuck you.
Jesus was a tough that just some out of place New Yorker. He hung out on the boulevard. He was selling nickel candies. He was saving up all his quarters. He bought himself a cheap guitar. Started playing bars. Kids came in their cars. Hear them shouting at the stage. Jesus says. Jesus says, yes it does. Jesus says, you know, Jesus started changing. Things got pretty strange. He saw his t-shirts everywhere. He started missing shows. The bad came down the blows. But Jesus, he just didn't care. Things got out of hand. So he quit the band. Still the critics, they would rave. What? Jesus saves. Jesus saves. Yes, it does. Jesus saves.
2 years later, another great album, but a different album was released, Edge of Thorns. What happened here? I mean, you kind of stepped aside.
I just lost my voice from Savatage killed me, you know, and that on top of my incredibly bad drinking problem that developed after being broke all the time. I mean, you know, the thing is they blame you, you know, they blame the rock and roll guys or the guys in the band. Oh, you fucking... But it's really, they drive you to it. You know, they drive you to the alcohol. They make you want to get fucked up so you don't think about anything because if you were sober all the time, you'd lose your fucking mind. So they got the best of me. You know, I couldn't take it anymore. I was broke. I was like, my marriage was falling apart. It was like, I just went off the edge, you know, and I lost my voice. It was just so bad, you know, and I just had to I figured if I didn't get away from it, I was going to die. And Paul was like, well, you getting what? I'm like, look, I'll write and play on the record. You know, I'll play all the keyboards. I'll write with you guys. I said, but we just got to get someone else in here. I can't do this no more. I'm going to die. And he was like, who are we going to get? No one can sing like you. I said, I don't want to get someone that sounds like me. We need to get a guy that's totally different. I said, let's look for somebody. And we had tons and I got the tape of Zach, and I listened to Zach's voice, and I was like, okay, well, since they're trying to beat us into going a more commercial style anyway, because that was always the thing, they were trying to beat us into being Skid Row, or beat us into being Warrant or Winger, and we were like, we didn't want to be them. You know, we didn't want to be them. No offense against any of the guys in the band. It's like, you know, but it's like we didn't want to do what they were doing. We knew exactly what they were doing. They were writing bubblegum metal. They were writing songs for 13 to 18-year-old girls that liked the way they looked in their tight jeans with their nice long blonde hair, and that wasn't us, you know. We were like, you know, fuck that. You know, we're musicians, man. What happened to that? Remember musicians, guys who play? And so I just had the end of it, and then so we found Zach, and I liked his voice, and that's where he entered the movie, you know. And I started writing songs with him, and we started working on his voice. Paul and I worked very hard with Zach on the first demos of Zach doing Edge of Thorns were god awful. And it took us about 6-7 months of working with Zach, getting him because he was shitting his pants. He was like, I can't replace you. I'm like, I'm going to help you. Don't worry about it. I was like, it's better him than me, you know. My attitude was like, let this guy go through this shit for a couple fucking years. I need a vacation. But, you know, I thought the record was good, you know. It's not one of my favorites, but it's a good record. It's got some, I mean, Edge of Thorns is a classic song. And still one of my favorite ballads of all time is All That I Bleed. So, I mean, and that was the last song I ever wrote with Chris. That's why it has a very special meaning to me. So, yeah, that was a good record, though.
Do you think the album would have been very different if you did the singing on this?
Yeah, a lot of those songs I probably wouldn't have been able to sing. They weren't my style. But that was exciting to me because I felt that, again, I was feeling kind of stale that we already did everything with my voice that we could do. So the thing of working with someone else that was totally different than me enabled me to bring songs to the band that we wouldn't have even tried to do if I was singing. You know what I mean? So that was probably in a way a good thing for the band because it showed another side of where we could go, you know.
An offering of reasons, we put them all in play. A covering of treasons that one by one we let slip away. A solitary dancer, so lost upon her stage.
Problems didn't stop there. What happened now? I guess that was during the Edge of Thorns tour. Chris died in a traffic accident. Was that during the tour? And
it was in between legs. They were going to be going to Europe. I don't remember who they were going to be playing with, but they were supposed to be going to Europe. But that was, you know, I mean, you just think, you know, things can't get any fucking worse, and then something like that happens, and something so senseless and meaningless. I mean, the guy who hit him shouldn't even have been on the road. I mean, he has 7 prior drunk driving convictions. He was driving without a license, he shouldn't have even have been, he should have been in jail. And it's just, you know, the world lost a great talent that night, man. They really did. I don't think anyone... Some people, when I meet people here in Europe and stuff, where I meet people and talk about Chris, I'd say about 50% of them know that we were really robbed of something that we all wanted to see unfold and it never got the chance to. Because Chris wasn't even at his peak yet when he died. He wasn't even there yet. In another 3-4 years, if he would have lived, I can't even imagine what he would have been doing. I guess it's easy for me to talk about him like that because I'm so close to him, but I've seen every great guitar player that's ever played, you know, and most of them live. Eddie Van Halen's, Randy Rhoads, and I would put Chris next to any of those guys any day of the week, and he never received a minuscule of the recognition and the attention that these other guys got. And you know what? It didn't really bother him because he knew he was special. It just saddens me that that our collaborating together on stuff was really getting enjoyable. And it saddens me that I didn't get a chance to see that movie to the end. It was that movie was kind of cut off for me halfway through. And I think that's sad. I'm sad for the fans too, because the fans of Chris and my music, we got robbed, and it's sad. But he's, I know he looks down every night when I'm up there. I feel his presence all the time, so I know he's with me, and that's cool. That gets me through everything.
Your next album, Handful of Rain's kind of like a Jon Oliva solo effort. I heard this was a lot of therapy to you. Did you ever sit down to consider whether you should continue or not, or did you just go to the studio and start recording?
The sad thing was at that time I really needed my friends around me, and everybody abandoned me. They didn't abandon me because they didn't like me. I think they just abandoned ship because they didn't have, I don't think they had as much confidence in me being able to pull this off, because I wasn't really showing any confidence in myself at all anyway. So, but I remember we all, Paul told me that, everyone's going to come in and we're going to work on this record and we're going to do this song for Chris that you wrote. And all I wanted to do was put that song out. I didn't care about doing a record. I said, I want to put this song out for Chris and just put it out. And they wouldn't let us do it. They were like, nope, if you're going to do that, you got to do a whole album. So I was like, all right. But I remember the first day of the studio, I showed up and no one was there. It was just me. It's like, where is I was calling. No one would answer their phone or anything like that. Then Paul O'Neill showed up and he goes, where's the guys at? I'm like, I don't know. You tell me. You told me everyone was going to be here. Where the fuck are they, man? So we sat down. No one showed up. So we sat down. We talked, and I said, look. I said, let's just work. We'll just put the tracks down. I'll play the drums. And then it went to I'll play the drums and the bass. And then it went to, okay, I'll play all the rhythm guitars and So it just came, it was me playing everything. And then, we finally convinced Zach to come in and sing, because I was going to have to sing too. So it was like, finally Paul came in one day and said, I got a hold of Zach last night, and he said he'd like to come in and start to work again. So he came in and he started doing the singing, and then we had everything else done except the solos. And then I had Alex's phone number from the tours we did with him, and he was the only guy I knew that I could call and say, look, I've got a week and I need you to do 12 guitar solos. And he was really a sweetheart, man. He came and he kicked major ass. I love the work he did on the record. I think it's brilliant. And he helped out a friend in a really tough time, and that was really, really cool of him. So I always have a special place in my heart for Alex, just because that was a really sweet thing to do, because he knew I was fucking toast, And it shows you, you do make some good friends in the business. All the guys from Testament were just angels to hang out with, I love them all, man. They're great guys.
You still had problems with your voice. Did you consider to sing on the album yourself?
No, I mean, my voice wasn't back, wasn't ready. And, we just had Zach come in, and Edge of Thorns was top 40 song in America on the radio. So it was like it would be stupid to change singers back again. I was like, well, I just had a top 40 hit with him and on Edge of Thorns. So, so getting him back in, we thought the song Handful of Rain was going to be a big song in America, but it just didn't do anything. We did a video for it and stuff, and, of course, that I paid for. I didn't even go to the video shoot. I was actually on a fishing trip, but they made sure they had the hotel number where they could fax the bill to me. So, but the Handful of Rain was a Jon Oliva solo record, basically, with Zach singing and Alex playing lead guitar.
In the lineup, it says Steve Wackles on the drums.
Yeah.
Why is that?
I had to make it look like a band. It was like when we were going to put the record on, I'm like, what do we do? And it's like, and by that time now, all the guys had heard the tracks, like Wackles, after it was just, the problem was that it was too soon after Chris died for Johnny or Steve to want to have anything to do with music. I had to do it because I would have gone crazy if I didn't. And I rushed into it because I needed something to occupy my time. And, I couldn't wait around for him. But when it came time to put the record out, I thought I made the right decision by saying, look, I don't care. I don't have an ego problem. It's like I'm not an egotistical person. So it's like, look, just put Steve Wackles drums, Johnny Middleton bass, yada, yada. That's okay. I don't care. And let's just get going and see what happens. And so that was my attitude with Savatage always was whatever best for the whole thing. That's what we got to do. You're a team player. It's a very tight-knit, a band's a very tight-knit family like that. You got to do what's best. Sometimes you got to cover for people. Sometimes you've got to, you got to lie a little bit.
Father, can you hear me? This is not how it was meant to be. I am safe and so are you, as for the other's destiny. Father, can you hear me? This is not how it was meant to be. I am safe and so are you, as for the other's destiny. Father, can you hear me? This is not how it was meant to be. I am safe and so are you, as for the other's destiny. Father, can you hear me? This is not how it was meant to be. I am safe and so are you, as for the other's destiny. Father, can you hear me? This is not how it was meant to be. I am safe and so are you, as for the other's destiny. Father, can you hear me? This is not how it was meant to be. I am safe and so are you, as for the other's destiny. Father, can you hear me? This is not how it was meant to be. As he stood in his trance, staring at
I think this is the first time you used multiple vocal layers. I mean, is it the end of a chance? Which is a very cool thing, and you've done that later as well. Was that a Paul O'Neill thing?
No, that was actually a Jon Oliva thing at first. It was trying to replace Chris Oliva. We're like, we got to think of some other avenues to go down. And that was one of the avenues I said with Paul, you got me and Zach now. It's like, why don't we try to expand a little bit on the vocals and try some, Queen type stuff, some stuff that no one's really doing anymore. Let's try to find something different. And Chance was the first experimental song of that thing where we're going to go, what if we have like all these different parts going on at the same time, counterpoint type shit. And it just built from there, But Chance was the beginning of that new direction of where the band was going to go. More theatrical, more vocal, orchestra, heavy, mixed in with the heavy metal. It had to do something. It would have been stupid to try to reproduce what we had with Chris because it wasn't going to work. So we had to go and forge new territory, and that was the best idea I could come up with.
Which of us is now in exile? Which in need of amnesty? Are you now but an illusion? In my mind alone you breathe. You believed in things that I will never know. You were out there drowning, but it never showed. Till inside a rain-swept night you just let go.
For the next album, Dead Winter Dead, released the year after in '95, there were some big changes in the lineup. I guess you took the direction even a step further on this concept album. What was the making of this album like?
Well, this is again a Paul O'Neill brainchild. He had the story that he was working on, and he suckered me in to come into his house one night, and he fucking goes, "I got this great story, and it goes like this, and it's about this cello thing, and then the guy gets blown up, and his leg flies here, and I was like, wow, this sounds good. Okay, what do you want to do?" He says, "Well, let's make this the next Savatage record." I was like, "Well, are you sure this is what you want to do?" He's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Okay, let's do it." So we sat there and we wrote the, we spent the time in New York and we just wrote it. It just came out. I still, of all the concept records except for Streets, but between that and Wake and Magellan and Poets, I like Dead Winter Dead best, I think. It just makes the most sense to me. I still don't know what Wake and Magellan's about, so I hope we don't have any questions about that.
Chris Caffrey came back in the band, and Al Petrilli joined as a second guitar player, and Jeff Plate comes in as a drummer. Did that affect the music in a big way?
Well, yeah, definitely a big, huge difference between Jeff Plate and Steve Wackles. I mean, or even between Jeff Plate and myself playing, because the way I play drums very similar to the way Steve Wackles does. Jeff was much more a finesse drummer, whereas Steve and myself were pounders, So that definitely opened up new territories to go down. Al Petrilli coming in had a vast experience of playing different types of music, from Asia to Alice Cooper to whoever else, other 100 million bands he played with. But Al was a seasoned player. He could play anything. You say, play this, and Al be like, done. All right, thanks, man. So yeah, I mean, it started to fuel that. The big thing about Dead Winter Dead was also, it was the beginning of Trans-Siberian Orchestra. Once we did that song and all that stuff started happening, it was all based off of that record. So that was a turning point in the band's career as far as the success of the band, because Dead Winter Dead sold incredibly well in America because of that Christmas song, which became the birthstone of Trans-Siberian Orchestra, which is now fucking multi-platinum. I have cars and houses now. Very cool.
And in between all this, you released the Dr. Butcher album with Chris Caffrey. Yeah. Was that... Well, why is that? Was it just to do something different that you could control yourself?
It was just to have some fun. I wanted to swear a little bit, and I was pissed off at the world, and I was pissed off at God. I was pissed off at everybody. They just took my brother from me, and everything sucked. And and it was a Dr. Butcher record was me just venting to everybody, and it's still one of my favorite pieces of work that I ever did, just because it's so raw and honest. There's no mysteries in anything. It's all right in your fucking face, man. So it was a fun record to do. It was a therapy. Again, it was just, you get like artists or people who write music, that's you wear your emotions on your sleeve, and it's like sometimes you've got to get that shit out, And I got it all out on that record, trust me.
The Wake of Magellan, released in 1997, is that an underrated record? I think it's pretty good.
It's a good record. I mean, the music and stuff is really great on it. I love the music. I just don't understand what it's about. I mean, I still don't understand what it's about. And it's nothing against Paul. I'm not making fun of him or anything like that. But I just think we got a little bit too deep on that one with the story. That's all. Nothing other. I think there's some great songs on there. I think Hourglass is a fabulous song. I think the title track, I think, is a great song. I like the songs that I sang on that record a lot. You Stop Me Now, however that one goes. I can't remember the name of it, but Paragons of Innocence I like that, but that's not the one I was talking about. The one I'm talking about is called Another Way. We did a lot of singing on that record, boy. We were all singing our asses off on Columbus and Magellan and my grandma.
That's a great part.
Yeah, I tried doing that shit live.
Well, you did in Germany. I heard, and you...
Yeah, it almost killed us.
Yeah. The reason for you coming back as a vocalist on this album on a few tracks, was that just because your voice was back?
My voice was starting to feel, I was getting more confidence in it, and, you know, my voice was starting to feel better, but I still wasn't sure I could carry the whole weight, you know, and I still liked what we were doing with Zach, and I figured it wouldn't hurt to stick a few Jon Oliva songs in there, so... And it worked out pretty good, and I got a little bit of confidence back without having the pressure of having to carry the whole record. So I said, if I'm going to start to sing again, and I always knew I wanted to come back and sing again, but I wanted to do it slowly to make sure that I didn't bite off more than I could chew, so to speak.
As he stood out on the watch deck looking out onto the sea, it would offer no solutions, only silent company. So he took hold of the reasons as he tried to understand, but they offered just confusion as they bled into his. Dear God, couldn't you decide what should happen to a man's assassins? Dear God, is it suicide? I have never been a man of passion. I believe what the prophet said, that the oceans hold the dead. But at night when the waves are near, they whisper and die. There are wounds that bleed inside us, there are wounds we never see. They are part of our refinements that allow a man to be. There are wounds that bleed in silence with aristocratic grace. There are tears we keep beside them, never seen upon us. Dear God, do you think it's wise to remember everything that's ever happened? Dear God, could we compromise amongst the shadows of this night be everlasting? I believe what the prophet said, that the oceans hold the dead. As I contemplate this stand, what I do is who I.
Then it took 4 years before your next album, and
We were busy.
well, that's good.
Doing what? I don't know, but we were busy doing something.
Well, you actually left Atlantic after all those years, and you signed with SPV.
Yeah.
Was your contract over with Atlantic, or did you just manage to get out of
It
it?
was just as, you know, I still to this day call it the Great Escape. We had to get out of there because they just weren't interested. You know, we said we want to do another Savatage record, and the guy from record company said, why? So I was like, I knew pretty much there that the relationship between us and them was over. I was like, what do you mean, why? It's like, why? You got Trans-Siberian Orchestra's platinum. What are you going to fuck it up for by doing another Savatage record? That's what they said to me. So I was like, well, all right, well, we're going to see you. We're busy. And so we left, and, you know, and there you have it.
You recorded this album as a quartet. What was that like? I mean, Zach left the band before.
Yeah, well, Zach and Al strategically left the band like right when the main tracks started. So all the songs that the original idea was I was going to sing half the songs and Zach was going to sing half. And of course, Zach decided to leave, and his songs were already recorded. So I had no choice but to try to sing them, and they weren't in my keys. They were all in Zach's keys. But it was either I figured out a way to sing them, or we spent another $70,000 re-recording the album again. And I was like, no, I'll sing them. So Paul's like, are you sure you can do this? I'm like, I'll do it. Don't worry about it. I made the wrong decision. I should have went back and re-recorded certain songs. But I mean, it was 4 years between albums. It's like it would have held up the record another year. I was like, what am I going to do? I was like, and I didn't think I did a bad job. I thought it was okay. You know, but you can definitely, at least I can, you can definitely tell the songs that were written for me to sing and the ones that weren't written for me to sing. They stick out like the difference between having a rock hard dick and having no dick.
Was that a bad breakup with Zach? I mean, he left you.
No, nothing was really bad with anybody. Anybody who's been in and out of Savatage, Savatage has always been like a family thing. It's like we don't, you know, it was never like if anyone wasn't happy, they were free to go do whatever they wanted. I wasn't like going to be, okay, well, if you leave, I'm going to, you know, call you an asshole. I was like, well, you know what, you know, he just had a baby and, you know, he wasn't happy and, you know, he hated touring. And, you know, so it was like the guy was just not happy. So it was like, you know, when he told me, I was like, I understand, man. It's like you gave me 10 years of your life. It's like I appreciate it. It's like I'm not going to get. Everyone thinks like I'm going to beat him up or something. You know, no, you can't leave. Oh God, help me, Ezekiel. Oh please. But you know, that's not it. You know, Al Petrelli, he never wanted to play with Megadeth. He didn't want to leave Savatage. He left Savatage for monetary reasons. You know, it was the money. I mean, and that's the bottom freaking line. I don't care what story anyone tells you. You know, Mustaine was paying him $2,000 a week more than I could afford to pay him. And he just got divorced, had 3 kids, had huge, huge debts. And it was like he came to me. He was like, I don't want to do this. He's like, you know, can't we work something out? I'm like, Al, it's my fucking band, and I don't even make that much money, man. What do you want me to do? I told him, I was like, I'm not going to be mad at you, man. You have a family to take care of. Do what you got to do. That's the way we've always been, though. If you're not happy, you know, that's, you know, we're not going to call you names or anything like that. Just because anyone who's played with us is felt, that's been around us, has felt that closeness. And even when you leave, you still have that connection to Savatage. You can't get rid of it. It's like a fungus, you know, a fungus of love.
Commissar, the night is breathing. Could it be, Commissar? We should be leaving now before the curtain does come crashing down. Do you hear, Commissar? The night is silent. Do you think, Commissar? Is defiance. Do you see, Commissar? The mob has faces. Could it be, Commissar? The dark embraces all as darkness will end in that dark will drown.
I had to have another guy because I couldn't cover it all myself. And I thought Damon, when I've met Damon and I heard him sing, I thought he could cover Zach's material very well. And could maybe help me out on a couple things too. So, but he was mainly hired for that tour, and then we were going to see what happened. If we were going to decide to keep working, which the original game plan was to do that tour and then get in the studio, and Damon was going to sing half the record and I was going to sing half the record, and just like we were going to do with Zach. And then, we were on tour in America, in California, and it was September 11th happened. And we were trapped 4,000 miles away from home in the parking lot of a hotel and a bus with not knowing what was going on, we were right in the middle of a tour, and it was just such a traumatic... I knew people who died in that. I had friends of mine that were firefighters that used to come and hang out at the bar that was by the studio that we used to work at that was in the downtown area. And they were friends of mine. We used to play darts and stuff in the bars. And I found out that 4 of them died that day. And it was like something happened that day to everybody in the band. Watching that on TV, and there was a building that I was in that building a week earlier having coffee with this friend of mine in the lobby. Like a week earlier, I was in that building. That's how fucked up that is, and to be in those buildings and see how massive they were and to see them crumble like that. And then we had to make our way across the country, and we had, we were freaking out. No one knew at that time if we were going to get attacked again or what was going on. And when we finally made it back to Florida, I just saw it in everybody's faces. Everyone was just like, especially Johnny, Jeff, even Caffrey, everyone's faces. It was just like, this, we got to stop. This is it. I can't do this no more right now. I just knew it right then and there that was the last thing we were going to do for a long time. I knew it was at the end of that road. And the Savatage, has always been busy. We've always been together for 20-something years. Even when there's been a couple years in between albums, it's only because we were working on other projects, but we were always working. And that was just like a wake-up call, man. Everyone was like, that was, no one said anything, but I knew when I got home, finally to my wife and my kid, I was like, phew. I was just so relieved to be home. It was just weird. And that's when I knew that things weren't the same anymore. It wasn't going to be the same ever again. And that's when I started writing the material that's on my record that I just put out. There's lots of references to that day on that record. And if we talk about it, I'll clue you in. But it was just, that was the end of that phase of our lives together. And then whatever's supposed to happen from this point on will happen when it's time to happen. No one's ever said, well, the band together anymore, or do we break up? No one's ever said Savatage is broken up. No one's ever said, we've just never said anything to each other. We've just kind of said, well, when we get, when it's time, we'll do it. That's kind of been this consensus. So I'm sure there'll be another Savatage record at some point. I just don't know when.
So either you or Paul O'Neill has to pick up the phone and, say we're ready?
I guess everybody's got to pick up the phone, I mean, someone's got to call me and say, hey, we're ready to work again. You want to do this record? And, and if no one ever does, I can't get mad at them for that. I've had them, they've given me 20 some odd years of their lives. While everyone else was out partying and having relationships with their wives and stuff, we were in hotel rooms or on a bus or on an airplane or in a studio, and our families were always left at home. We never could afford to take our families with us. So it's like, I missed my son's whole life, from when he was 3 years old until he was 19, 20 years old. I probably hardly ever seen him. And that's tough. You can't get that back. That's a tough thing to deal with. Sure. But it's what I do. So what am I going to do?
Well, then I guess your fans are very pleased that you wrote an album, Taj Mahal, with Jon Oliva's Pain. It's a great album, and I just saw you guys playing live last night, and it was a great show, and you are obviously having a great time.
Yeah, man, I'm having a ball. It's like starting all over again. And there's no pressure with these guys. These guys, they've all been around, they're successful in other parts of their lives. They just want to play. They love to play. And I like that. and they've lit a fire under my ass, you know, and it's like, it's cool. I feel rejuvenated, and I'm singing better. I think I'm singing better now than I've ever sang in my career, and I'm just really happy, and that's important to me, you know, at this stage of my life and stuff. You know, I'm in my 40s now. It's like I'm not 25 anymore. I've got to be realistic, you know. And I also don't want to be singing sirens when I'm 63 years old, you know. But I still feel I'm young enough, and I miss playing, you know. Those years between Poets and not being out playing really was killing me, because I want to play. I love interaction with people. I love to go out and have I'm a lot of fun at parties, you know.
So can we expect another album from you if nothing happens in the Savatage camp?
Well, if Savatage does a record, it'll probably going to be made for release in the end of 2007, which is the 25th anniversary of the band.
Well, looking back at your career, is there something at a certain point you'd like to have done in a different way, if you could do it, you know, again?
Well, Fight for the Rock is the obvious. That was the obvious downer of the whole band's career, obviously, besides Chris passing away, which was obviously the biggest thing that happened to us. But I think as Savatage with Chris Oliva, if we could have taken that year, the Fight for the Rock year, and turned it around, I think the band would have been a lot bigger. And I think that record really hurt us, because we were climbing, and then we laid an egg. And we fell down the whole fucking ladder that we just climbed. We went, oh, God, boom, 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 right down to the bottom of the fucking basement. But I think we recovered really well. We showed our guts. You know, we got up and we wiped the dirt off of our shirts and said, okay, here we go. So that was the one thing. If that was, you know, that would be the one thing I would have changed, is I would have fired those fucking crooks earlier.
I told you about the sirens and the hunger for flesh. I showed you the dungeons beneath the city's unrest. Felt the power of the night makes the legion strong. And by the grace of the witch, I bring to you this song. Hear the people say. Hear the people say. Hear the people say. In a summer's rain,